Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus, episode 745, coming to you on the 27th of May, the year of our Lord 2025, the day after Memorial Day. Now, I'm going to entitle this, When to Take a Pause. There's a couple of different reasons, but first and foremost, my church, the series pretty much for the year is going to be pause, right? I got to say, that's a struggle. I often, tell people, my wife and I are both type A, firstborn, Gen Xers. We have a tendency to not be able to say no. We have a tendency to not be able to stop until we drop. And it can be awkward sometimes when you just, there's stuff that has to get done and you got to find a way to get it done. So what does that mean? What's that play here? Okay, so we're going to take a little time. I should say I'm going to take a little time to discuss what does that look like. Because, we'll get there. Let me remind you, the show's not going away. We're reconfiguring. We've reconfigured. The plan is to get out an episode once a week, preferably on Tuesdays, perhaps Mondays. We'll see. But the idea is we're going to spend the same amount of time talking about similar issues because, well, that's life, right? You may not care about politics, but it cares about you. That's all there is to it. And even I, somebody that loves to talk and think about and be involved in this, I get tired. I need a break. So that's where today comes up with when to take a pause. Being that said, I don't want you to pause right now. I need you to take a moment, just 30 seconds to a minute of your time. Like, share, subscribe, follow to this here program. Join me on the social media of your choice. I have a page and a group at Facebook. I'm a pro at Gab. I drop in at MeWe. I've got a few things up at Instagram and X. And yes, you can still find me over at YouTube. You can follow the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice, from one of Amazon's many offerings to Spotify, Podbean, my home, or Stitcher, Apple, Google, whatever sort you prefer. I'm there. All right, so here we go. On with the program, right? We're in the midst of the runoff here in McKinney, Texas. Early voting started today. Not really sure why we need 2 weeks to vote in a runoff, but here we are. I really don't understand why we need more than 3 days to vote for any one election, but here we are. Apparently, it's a problem if you want to ask for somebody for an ID to vote, but it's not a problem to ask for an ID to, go to a movie, buy a beer, buy cigarettes, get on a plane, drive a car. None of that's a problem, but, it's just the world we live in. All right, where was I going? Oh, that's right. So ultimately, you have to ask yourself, what's on the line? Now, so for me, I can't take a break just yet. I just can't. We got this runoff election. But what I did do is I did take a pause over the weekend. Long weekend. I actually went to Lowe's. I saw a really cool display that they had put out. I gave them props on my personal Facebook. Very little posting, very little commenting. I don't even think I put a single post up, but maybe one or two comments or likes. Just take a pause. The social media will be there tomorrow, right? The nonsense never stops. But one thing I couldn't get over, and now, admittedly, I can't say that I didn't look at it but I didn't participate. But I couldn't get over the need for some folks to still push a narrative. It's like, give it a rest, man. We're on holiday. Everybody's taking a break. There's no need for that. Now, I imagine that if I looked long enough and hard enough, I'd find that all supporters of all candidates seem to lack that amount of self-control. I'm certain that I would be able to prove that out. My goal here is not to throw any one team or party under the bus. It's just to wonder what is it that was gained. What do you think anybody really thinks when they see something like that? I mean, I got to be honest. I'm about as political a person as you're going to ever run across. I'm about as involved as I can be. I got tons of irons in the fire at any given time, it seems like. Running around here and there. But I don't get it. I don't get it. The other thing I don't get, and I've seen this, right? There are people that are hardcore MAGA. A good number of these people I consider friends, allies, trust implicitly. But it's like a piece of them, maybe their discretion, shuts off when dealing with the Donald or his latest whatever. Now, in case you think I'm punching right, I'm not. I'm making an acknowledgement that everybody's got their guilt, right? Everybody's got their soft spot, their weak point, whatever you want to call it. Now, folks to the left of me seem to have this in spades, but I want to acknowledge that it's not unique. It's not any condemnation, if you will, from me. It's merely an observation. I guess that's the way I'll go with it. It's an observation. So I'm going to ask myself, what's on the line? What is so important that you can't take a break? What is so important that not only can you not take a break, you don't think anybody else should take a break? I wonder if this goes with that kind of Yankee attitude. I don't want to see anybody else having fun. I don't want to see anybody else enjoying themselves. I don't want to see anybody else doing something that I disagree with. And when I say Yankee attitude, I mean, yeah, kind of comes out of the northeast of these United States, but it's kind of a mindset. It's not necessarily, sadly, unique only to Yankees, but it is kind of a trait that we're all familiar with. So I ask myself, the folks that just couldn't control themselves, couldn't take the break, couldn't respect those that gave it all, and had to make it about their candidate or their political position or whatever, what's at stake here? I mean, I suppose I could make arguments on both sides of the equation. I suppose I'm objective and even-handed enough to acknowledge that there are some consequences, some things that I wouldn't prefer to see happen if candidate A wins or candidate B wins, right? But the reality is, most of that is not going to affect the, somebody uses the phrase temperature, the water in my pool. Well, I don't have a pool, but I'll settle for, let's say, the mileage my car gets. How about that? Something that's probably never going to change. Excuse me. Wow. Well, I'm not sure what happened there. Now, I'm going to assume that a great deal of the people that get caught in this, right, that can't allow themselves to take a break, are people that are normally disengaged, normally not all in, normally kind of focus on their lives. And it's just they get sucked into something and they just can't let it go. They're never going to give it up. They won't let go. But as somebody that's been there, done that, been hyper involved, deeply concerned about a lot of things over the years, I got to tell you, you have to be willing to take a break. You got to separate yourself. I've said publicly multiple times that though I have a preference in candidates for the multiple runoffs that are going on in Collin County right now, I'm fairly certain that nothing significant is going to change in my life regardless who wins. Oh, it might be marginally better or marginally worse, but the next morning I'm going to get up, put my clothes on, and go to work. Nothing specifically or uniquely is going to affect my life. And honestly, I prefer it that way, right? One would like to believe that they can live their life without government sticking its nose into everything that we do. So at this point, the answer to the question of what's on the line, not a whole lot. It's not a crisis. But unfortunately, crisis is what it takes to get people to go vote, to be involved. So you get sold the crisis every time you turn around. But then the problem is everything becomes a crisis. And if everything's a crisis, you don't ever settle down. You don't ever stop. You're not allowed to take a pause. So here's something to consider. Would you like my pause? Here's something to consider. You have to ask yourself, can I change the outcome? Well, ostensibly, if you have a local race or a local event, you showing up could change the outcome. Indeed, I've seen many races or outcomes determined by less than 250 people. That's important to remember because if the average person knows 100 people, that takes legitimately 2.5 people that could change the outcome. Right? Can you sway 100 people? Well, maybe not, but could you get them maybe interested? Could you move them from, if they're already moving from B to Z, could you get them to, I don't know, start at X? I made that up off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But I mean, the reality is you may not be able to get them moving, but you could change their course. You could alter their speed, right? This is how we need to look at things. But again, keeping in mind, are you actually changing the outcome in the long run? I don't know. I think that's something everybody needs to ask themselves. Was it worth it, right? Is the outcome a justification for what we've done or what we've participated in? I think that's a very fair question. Do you have an answer for it? I mean, look, I've long considered the fact that there are a good number of business owners that don't want to get involved in certain things because they don't want to lose customers, because they don't want to offend people, they don't want to create drama. And that used to work. That used to be acceptable. Unfortunately, while a good number of people, will just say on the right, were tolerant of that, they would allow for that, that's really not the case anymore. I mean, there are fewer and fewer places and things you can do where you are allowed to be yourself and not have this stuff overridden on you, right? To not be forced into a situation. And I feel bad for people that are stuck in that situation, right? Can't you just be what you want to be? Can't you just, I don't know, be allowed to be separate? Again, keep in mind, you may not care about politics, but it cares about you. But if you want to take a pause, if you want to recover, take a break, however you want to phrase that, the first thing you have to acknowledge is what's at stake. You have to understand what are the consequences of you taking a break. What might happen in your absence? This is a common question I get. Well, Stephen, if you're not there, what's going to happen? Stephen, if you're not there, is the end of the world going to come? Stephen, if you're not involved, will it still happen? Will it change? I mean, it's a good question, right? So when I sat back for a little bit of time over the long weekend, I thought to myself, what must other people have thought? Right? One person stays home from a battle. Does it affect the outcome? Maybe. One person sets out an activity. Does it change anything? I don't know. I mean, look, I don't consider myself Brett Favre in this equation here, so let's not get lost. But if Brett Favre sits out a game, I don't know, 2005, is the outcome entirely different? Yeah, I guess it would be, wouldn't it? So every little bit helps. Every little bit changes something. So if that's the case, it stands to reason that you taking a break probably maybe requires you put somebody else in for you, right? It's kind of like a substitution, if you will. I'm going to tag out, you go in. Not to be confused with wrestling, right? They're both. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm sorry. But like even hockey, right? Substitutions. You got to have fresh blood. You got to have, fresh activity. That's what changes things. It increases the tempo. It makes a difference. But you get that pause in there, and then when you come back in the game, perhaps you're a little rested, but you're more engaged. You're more active. You're more virile. you're amping back up because you got a moment to catch your breath. You got a moment to recalibrate. So you take that little break and you come back even stronger, right? That's kind of one of the things that we've learned over the course of the year thus far on the idea of a pause. If you take a pause and you rest, you can come back stronger. It kind of reminds me of the old analogy or story, if you will, depending on how you heard it. Two lumberjacks show up. They begin chopping down wood. And every so often, the other guy leaves. He's gone for about 20, 30 minutes. He comes back, starts chopping wood again. And at the end of the day, they look at the two piles. The guy that kept leaving had a pile that was significantly larger than the other guy with chopped wood. And he asked, well, what are you doing? I mean, you were gone for 25% of the day or whatever. How did you possibly do more work than I? What were you doing? The response is I was sharpening my axe, right? I mean, there's something to say for that. Starting fresh or restarting fresh. So when you look in the context of what's been going on, it's important to take a break. I mean, you can't fully shut off. You can't completely ignore the world around you. You can't pretend that things aren't going to continue and there's not changes always afoot. If you doubt me, look down to Austin. But the reality is, you taking a time out, you taking a pause, it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, going to make that big a difference. Especially if you return to the game. Especially if you make a concerted effort to be prepared for when you come back to do what is necessary. So, again, I'm thinking about this, right? I'm off. I got an extra day off on the weekend. Watched some of the show, if you will, of what they did in D.C. Now, I don't know if there's any other veterans out there, but I don't know about you, but I tear up a little bit when I hear TAPS. I just do. And I wonder, these guys gave that last full measure, right? That's what they talk about. They went in, they did what had to be done. But how many of these guys actually never knew what happened? They didn't even get an opportunity to do anything before their lives were taken away. Are we really doing what's best for our people and by our people by involving ourselves in all this stuff all the time? Now you'd be wondering, where are you going with this, Callus? What's the connection here? Well, you see, one of the benefits that I believed we were going to get with Trump 2.0 is his commitment to stop killing people, ending wars. Now, I think rhetorically, he's doing mostly the right stuff, rhetorically. But I got to ask myself, has he really considered what happens when somebody calls his bluff? Has he really thought about the consequences of constantly challenging people? Perhaps he should take a break. Now, look, you can argue the details. You can. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is, we need to take a pause. We need to think about all the things we've been doing, and have we been actually getting the outcome that we said we wanted or that we said we desired? I mean, do we really think it's best, all the various things that we've done over the last, let's say, half century? Do we really think that our foreign policy is best suited to be dictated by the very companies that benefit from us being involved in all these things? Do we really think that our healthcare policy is best run by people that benefit by people being sick? Do we really think that it's best policy to be set for people that would rather see a return to the Dark Ages than people to be able to freely travel and take care of their families? Do we really think that, I'm just going to say it, do we really think that it is best for energy production to be dominated by those that benefit the most from it? Right? That the rules guiding that. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm willing to believe that people that are into farming or are in the forestry, they've kind of figured it out, right? You can't use it all up. You have to be smart about what you're doing here, and you have to reinvest in the future. But at a certain point, I think they just don't care. That's the bigger problem, right? They're going to get theirs and they're going to go away. They're getting their preferred outcome and they're not worried about anything after that. That should be a little concerning. But what does that mean to you and me? Well, in the grand scheme of things, not a whole lot. But if you took a pause and if you thought about what was really going on there, what was really involved, might you think about it a little differently? Might you consider things a little more thoroughly? Perhaps you won't be so gung-ho. Look, I know I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know there's a lot of, let's just say, fair-minded Democrats still out there somewhere. And they can't be thrilled with what nominally their party is still putting forth, all the while screeching about the latest crisis brought about by the other party, knowing full well that they had done virtually the same thing a little less than a year ago. Right? I mean, look, my people, they're not a whole lot better. They were hating on it and making a big stink about it when the previous president was doing various things along the same lines. But now that their guy is doing it, well, it's different now. Oh, it's not the same thing. Well, huh? How does that work? Again, I would just like people to be consistent. I don't think I'm asking for too much. Am I? But take a pause. Consider. Consider everything that's at play. Does it make sense? Is this a legitimate concern? Should I be upset about this? Take a pause. What's the outcome if I am involved? Can I really change what's going to happen? What's at stake? So before you get all worked up and out of shape, angry, start hating on people, whatever it is that is at play there, consider that. So taking a pause, yes, you do that for yourself. You recoup. You feel better, hopefully. You think about things a little bit differently. But secondarily, you give some thought. You consider what's at play, what's really going on. Is this something that's worth my time and my efforts? And I can just tell you firsthand, being politically involved for a good number of years now, elected officials are there to let you down. Elected officials, few and far between actually care about anything that you say or do. They just don't. They care about getting reelected. They care about you as long as their name's on the ballot. They want your support. Now, look, it's not everybody. I mean, look, I've got half a dozen people that I know personally that are elected officials that I trust implicitly and are good people. I know other people that I would say are good people, but I don't necessarily trust them implicitly. And then there's pretty much everyone else that just continues to find a way to let people down. And that's the problem. You keep promising things to competing sides, and sooner or later, you're going to have to pick. You're going to have to choose. What does that look like? Can you do it? Right? Well, I don't know. You're going to have to guess for yourself. You're going to have to figure that out. What does that mean? The reality is, we each have a price to pay, a job to do, and I would say a certain amount of interest in what the outcome is. But what does that look like? Where are we going to go? How is that going to happen? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I wish I had a snappy comeback. I wish I had a good conclusion. But again, for each person, it's going to be a little bit different. For each person, there's a potentially different outcome. For each person, you need to consider, what is it that I want? What's really at play here? Again, what's on the line? If you don't know, you don't know. But it's kind of up to us to figure that out, isn't it? We've got to make the decision. What are we going to do here? So I know I've rambled a little bit here. Last few minutes. It's hard to wrap this up because, I don't know what to tell you. I wish I had some advice. I wish I had some secret sauce here. But each individual is going to have to think about, what does it mean? What do I want to do? And what exactly does it mean to take a pause? I mean, if you have little kids, you ain't getting a pause from the kids. If you run a business, probably not a good idea to try and get a pause from that business that you run. But if it's extra things, right? That's where you have an opportunity. That's where maybe, just maybe, that pause will get you a break. That pause will allow you to focus on what you need to do to regroup, recoup, and be prepared for the next step. In either case, that's just kind of what I've been thinking about over the the long weekend here. Your mileage may vary, and as always, I will see you on the other side.
Canceled by the big tech mafia, but inadvertently profiting from owning their stocks in a mutual fund or ETF? At Two Pillars, they believe that censorship is a form of violence and a business practice that does not promote human flourishing. In many cases, through their investigative screening process, they can help you divest from companies that are denying your God-given, inalienable right to speak freely. Hey, Patriots, Two Pillars believes it's time for conservatives to align their values and investments. Two Pillars is your place for impact investing in the parallel economy. Find out what's in your investment portfolio with a complimentary portfolio review. Contact them today to learn more. Call toll-free at 833-377-0051 or send an email to info@twopillarsam.com. That's info@twopillarsam.com. Get started today. Advisory services are offered through Jacob & Boaz Asset Management, LLC, doing business as Two Pillars Asset Management or Two Pillars, a registered investment advisor in the states of Texas and California. Two Pillars is not endorsed by any government agency and is not engaged in the practice of law or tax advice.